But I wanted to make sure you all met this next guy, Will Chamberlain. He's going to tell us about it. Not Wilt Chamberlain. That's a different guy. He'll be later. He'll be around later. But Will Chamberlain, also popular. Never mind. And so Will and Raheem Kassam, you may know Raheem's name, they came up about 3 or 4 months ago. They told me about it. They said, we're going to restart Human Events. And Human Events is one of the classic magazines, conservative magazines, started in the 40s. And they've started it, and they published some of my writings, and Molly McCann is here, something she wrote. They're going to, John and Andy Schlafly's column, they're a sort of MAGA-centric, conservative, fearless about what's going on. They're not in the tank for anybody. They're not in the tank for the Chinese. They're not in the tank for any of the big donors. They're just for the truth. And I wanted you to meet Will, have him say a few words, and I'm being serious. If you're a writer, or if you want to be a writer, this is an entity that's publishing thoughtful stuff and on the front lines of the fight, and also sticking up on tech. His piece on tech 2 days ago was phenomenal about what big tech is doing, and also what the impact of a lot of the kind of corruption around big tech and who's getting the money and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, Will Chamberlain, humanevents.com, and a few words to encourage you all.
Oh, encourage you guys, huh? All right. Fine, I suppose. A lot of college students here, a lot of conservative college students. I don't think I've ever been in a place with this many conservative college students. Raise your hand if you feel like a minority on your campus. Okay. Not actually that many, okay? I thought it would be a little more, but in any event, I sympathize.
They're packed too tight. They can't get their hands up.
I sympathize when I was in college. I guess it was a little bit of a minority. I was, in college in California, a private school, but then I coached college debate at the University of Oregon, which I don't think is the most conservative place in the world, and then did law school. And so I'm very sympathetic to the experience of conservatives on college campuses, and understand that it can really kind of be lame, especially in like a social environment where you're surrounded by liberals who are telling you, that you're wrong, and not only that, but that your beliefs are just somehow immoral. And so I think, the first point I want to make is that things like this are amazing, and it's really cool that you all are getting together in order to create this sort of mutual network of support with people from, I assume, colleges all over the country.
Correct. Right? Yep.
And so that's just a really cool thing, and so I think it's great that you're doing this with Eagle Forum Ed, and I mean, he's been helpful with us at Human Events too. But I think it's really awesome that you guys have all this together. But also, I think that you guys should take advantage of something that, especially if you're a conservative and you're a minority on your campus, you're on a campus with a bunch of liberals. There's something you get that the liberals don't. The liberals never get confronted with the other side, and you do. And that's a huge advantage if you exploit it. Because the only way you don't understand an argument if you cannot articulate it in a way that an adherent wouldn't be able to tell that you don't believe it, right? I call that the intellectual Turing test. I borrowed that from Brian Kaplan. Like, if you actually understand a liberal argument, you should be able to make that argument to a liberal if you had to, and they wouldn't know that you didn't believe it. And almost no liberals can do that with conservatives. When they try and make conservative arguments or parrot that, they can't. They don't know how, because they have never really understood. They never had to listen. When you're surrounded by liberals for 4 years, yeah, it sucks socially, it's not that fun, but you really do have the opportunity to fully understand people's arguments and develop as an intellectual. And so that's what I would say, like, look at your college experience as something you can use to become a better thinker and a better writer, and have a better understanding of where your opponents are, because it's especially fun. Like, my favorite pieces are when I can steal an opponent's concept and use it against them in a way that creates a problem. So for example, for social media censorship, I wrote an article entitled "Platform Access is a Civil Right." And the beginning of the piece is an anecdote from The Years of Lyndon Johnson, which, by the way, you should all read, by Robert Caro. Not written by a conservative, but probably the most important biography of the century, in my judgment. In that anecdote, it's an anecdote about the civil rights era and what it was like for black people in the Jim Crow South. What they had to go through when they were just driving through, how they couldn't use restaurants, couldn't use restrooms, and just how awful it was to experience, and why it was so reasonable in the civil rights era to say, you know what, yes, they're private companies, yes, they have freedom of association, but we're not going to let these violations of civil rights be tolerated anymore. And so when conservatives are censored on Facebook and Twitter, it's not that it's equivalent. Obviously, there's a big difference in terms of the impact of that level of discrimination to merely losing your social media account. But it's not trivial either. It's a big hindrance in your ability to express yourself and to participate in the public square and to have meaningful free speech. And so that platform access as a civil right is a way to capture that, and it's because we were able to flip a progressive frame and use it on our opponents because we understand progressive arguments that we can do things like that. So take advantage of what you learn in college from progressives, even when you don't agree with it.
And humanevents.com and what is it? Will at humanevents.com?
Will at humanevents.com.
There
You want to
go.
pitch yourself for pitch your pieces.
Pitch your stuff and
High
thank
standards.
you. Thank you very much for coming. Anybody questions? Questions for Will? Anybody questions? Oh, there you go.
So in regard to researching the other side and actually understanding the other side of the opinion, it seems like a lot of people don't do that these days on both sides. I guess talk about how important it is for us as young conservatives to understand the other side almost better than they understand their own side.
Well, you can't persuade anybody if you don't empathize with them, right? You can't. You have to be able to empathize with where your opponent is coming from. It's true, that's true in any number of areas of life. When you're negotiating, you're at a poker table, for example. You got to be able to empathize with people. And so, I actually have a controversial thing, right? Like, in the sort of insistence that you know you're right in advance, I really, especially in college students, I always want to be like careful with that, right? There's always something you don't know, and I bet if you haven't read all the books yet, there's no way. You're 22, you haven't had the time, right? So intellectual humility in college is really important, and really trying to work hard to empathize with where progressives are coming from, to really understand what they're saying, and then to still retain your conservative beliefs and then formulate the answer that accounts for the way they think about the world.
Other questions? All right, thank you, Will. Will at humanevents.com. Thanks for coming. We appreciate it. All right.